Alrighty, so we got the remainder of a J League match here. The one we started the other day that was brought to an early close. They're playing the remaining games right now. And
So what was the score of, was it 2-0 for cdloomis when they
I
stopped?
think that's correct. If I recall correctly, cdloomis was up 2-0. And they seem to have jumped the gun and started early. So I'm presuming this is the first game since, but I don't even know. Maybe they started 30 minutes early. I can't tell. The J Leaguers and schedules, they're not a good combination.
Looks like they're playing with a lot more of expansions than the last time we watched.
Well, I think this half of the match used all the expansions last time. You're thinking of the Math
Okay.
versus Big Papa.
Right.
Anyways, I haven't actually looked at this kingdom yet. What do we got going on here?
So I'm kind of surprised they haven't cashed in an urchin for a merc, because it seems like, well, speak of the devil.
Yep, as you say that, they do. Yeah, so it looks like you've got some choices to make on this board. You can trash with Chapel, or you can trash with Mercenary. And then you can draw with draw to X stuff like Minion and or Library, or you could draw with more standard draw like Werewolf and Tragic Hero. And I'm not totally sure what the choices are between those two in either case.
I definitely think you want some villages here, so I'm a little surprised that plazas are still at 10. Obviously,
And
you have
crowns.
acting troop. So it looks like cdloomis popped an acting troop already, so they have some villagers stored up. Turn 8 Chapel strikes me as pretty wrong.
Yeah, Chapel is not a card you buy turn 8 in very many cases. In fact, basically no cases would you ever buy Chapel turn 8. Chapel is a card you buy turn 1 or turn 2, and those are the options. Chapel's really, really good early in the game, and then it gets very bad very fast if you get it at any other time. The way Chapel works is you buy it very early on, like in your first shuffle, and then you're guaranteed, or close to guaranteed, to have Chapel with just bad cards in your hand, and then you can get a full 4-card trash off and be clean very early. If you're buying it later, you're both taking longer to get thin, which is bad, but also your Chapel's less likely to find your junk cards and more likely to collide with your good stuff, and then it's not going to do its job very well.
Yeah, and sometimes we even advise players to do the unthinkable and open something like Village with a Chapel, because you really want to open with something that cycles a bit with Chapel, so that you don't end up, because you want to get as much trashing out of it as possible in that first shuffle.
Yeah, so something reasonable here could just be opening Chapel and Urchin. Not that Urchin will be an important card if you have Chapel, but it's just a cantrip that doesn't get in the way. Like if you have Chapel and Urchin in the same hand, you can just play the Urchin and still trash 4 with Chapel. Whereas if you have Silver or something, then you only get to trash 3. Plus, Urchin will also interfere with their Chapel trash a little bit, because if your Urchin hits their Chapel hand, they'll also only get to trash 3 because they discard a card.
Yeah. So right there, that's a pretty sad Chapel, trashing a single copper.
Yeah, so I like Provinciable's opening. I think Minion Chapel seems totally fine. If you see Minion turn 1, you can discard and hope to find Chapel turn 3. I mean, if you find Minion turn 3, you can discard and then still get a Chapel trash in turn 3, even if it's only 3 cards instead of 4. Plus the attack will hurt them if you discard them down to a 4-card hand. cdloomis' opening though, Urchin Acting Troop, seems very questionable to me. I'm not sure what the function of that is.
If you're opening Urchin, you want to pair it with another attack card. So here that could be Minion or Werewolf, or just another Urchin.
Yes, if you had the 3-4, you could consider Urchin and then borrow for Werewolf, or Urchin and borrow for Minion. That would be fine. Most of the time with Urchin, you just buy 2 Urchins and then you're fine, because Urchin is also an attack card, and so it can activate itself.
And it's a pretty harmless card to add to your deck since it's just a cantrip. Yeah. So you can't really have a problem with having a bunch of Urchins unless you're drawing them dead, which is something that can happen with Mercenaries. You definitely need some village support in there.
Yeah. Now, double Urchin's a reasonably strong opening and a good way to get trashed early. That being said, I don't think I would do it here just because Chapel's around, which is faster form of trashing. So Chapel Urchin seems fine on the 4-3. On 3-4, you could even consider Chapel and then borrow for Minion or something to get the same opening as your opponent. Might be fine.
So Provinciable is very thin. which is something that often happens when you're playing mercenary. You reach these points where you don't actually have any junk to feed to mercenary anymore to keep on attacking.
Yeah. At some point, the mercenary becomes a junk card.
Yeah, and gains are pretty limited on this board, so it's not like you have an easy way to get more food for it.
These gold buys are making me very sad. I don't think... Why would you want gold?
And if you want gold, why not just get a tragic hero and have that give you gold?
Yeah, like, if anything, tragic hero is kind of an important card to have here because it's the best source of plus buy. I mean, you could also try to build like a double tactician thing.
Yeah.
You could do like a double tactician deck with like crowns and minions in it, and then you'd have 2 buys per turn to work with from your tactician. And that'd be okay. I think you could get by with that. But if you're not doing that, then the best you got is playing with tragic heroes. And it's actually kind of a sad thing, hence the tragic, that the tragic hero ends up dying when you play it and then giving you a treasure instead. And so if I'm going to be forced to gain a bunch of golds, or probably crowns, honestly, for more likely, off of tragic hero, I'd rather take the tragic hero and get the treasures indirectly.
So I think it's pretty confusing that Plaza's still at 10 because most of the good cards in this board are terminal. Tragic Hero, Werewolf, Tact, Library, all love villain, village support. Obviously, you can just play a minion stack without any villages, but if you want to mix in some other stuff, you really want some plazas or crowns to give you that flexibility with plus action.
Yeah, like pure minion stack, I think, is a thing that gets pretty highly overrated. It's okay as a baseline, but it's not very good. It's not something you only do if you've got like stuff that jives well with it. Like, I could see minions and tacticians here together, because tactician is plus buy, but tactician doesn't play well with treasures because it discards your hand before the buy phase, so you can't play your treasures. So minion can give you coins before you discard stuff, and then you can play with tactician. That's fine. But short of that, the minion stack doesn't strike me super appealing here, unless you're doing the tactician thing.
Yeah, and even if you are doing the tactician thing, I don't love it here just because the virtual money isn't that good. You only have minion.
Yeah, the minion here is basically just like $5 silver.
Yeah. It's kind of like a festival tactician build where you have to buy a lot of that action card to get enough virtual money to really make double tactician able to be worthwhile.
Even if they're not opposed to not using all their money... Oh, sorry, I think I added too many knots in there. Even if they are opposed to not using all of their money, I think they're also just buying the wrong $5 cards when they're buying $5 cards. Like, minion is not the card I want. I want, like, tragic hero and crown for the most part. And then some werewolves for not suicidal draw.
Yeah, and we've seen 4 werewolves are gone, but we still have plazas and crowns at 10. They're not going to be able to play any of those werewolves non-terminally. So far, it seems like they're mostly attacking with them.
Yeah, it's not a very good use of werewolf if you're only getting it in for the attack.
Yeah.
This is not time for province. This is definitely not time for province. This deck is...
Yeah.
This is a strong kingdom. Like, it's not the strongest ever, but this is a strong kingdom. You got, like...
It's a lot of good stuff here.
Good trashing, good draw. The only thing that's a little bit, finicky is buys. You have to rebuy Tragic Hero, but you can, like, crown your Tragic Hero and be reasonably happy with that. There's absolutely no excuse to be buying golds and then buying provinces this early. Certainly not.
And right here for Provincible, we see, the problem with running a bunch of terminals without village support is, like, right now from this hand, or you can toss the minions, I guess.
Right. I don't know why you toss the minion there. If you play the minion, you draw back up to a 4-card hand.
Yeah, exactly. Minions are very good against hand size attacks because they kind of don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, like, this deck is not together. It is not time to start adding provinces, because the deck is not going to get any better once you start adding provinces to it.
That's an important point we gloss over a lot. Like, a lot of the time, I remember myself as a newer player, I would, like, hit 8 fairly early on and think, like, okay, I'll just get a province here, and, like, I keep building afterwards. Like, it's not a big deal. But when you add a province, you're adding a stop card to your deck. So usually when greening, you want to get your deck ready to green and then shift into a mode where you're almost only buying green cards.
Yeah.
It's very hard to add a green card and then go back to building.
Yeah, agreed. I think that you really want to consider whether your deck is ready to like consistently take provinces. And it is, I'd say, pretty darn rarely the case that the first time you hit 8 should be the first time you buy province. Because if you just hit 8 for the first time, chances are your deck is not going to be consistently hitting 8 from there on out for the next few turns.
I've heard the rule of thumb before that you want to hit 8 twice before you... well, you can get a plaza now. You want to hit 8 twice before you start greening. I think that's a rule of thumb for money games. It's obviously not a particularly strong one, but the general point that like you need to be consistently hitting your price points before you start greening, because it's only going to get harder to hit them once you're adding stop cards.
Yeah, I had not heard that rule of thumb. I would say, though, it definitely does not apply to engine kingdoms like this one, which is also the vast majority of kingdoms. Like, I would not be buying province until I was hitting like 15, 20 plus here. There's so many good cards to buy, and I want all of them.
So we did see a tragic hero get taken. That's good. Like that. It's a lot of thought on Locust. It seems pretty clear a plaza to me.
This Locust is honestly really friendly. A Plaza is just a better card for Provincible's deck than a Werewolf is, and cdloomis is forcing them to take one. Acting Troop would also be totally fine. That's also a village. That would not be an unreasonable choice.
The thing about Acting Troop is it's really bad when it's your only village. Like, it's very hard to build an engine that uses Acting Troop as the only source of plus action.
Yeah.
But it's great to, villagers provide like a lot of smoothing in the same way that coffers provide smoothing for money decks. Villagers provide a bunch. Are you okay?
That's one way to
Villagers
ask that question.
provide a bunch of smoothing for engine decks, because if you happen to draw a hand where you don't have any villages, you can start off burning some villagers to hopefully get things into control.
I've unplugged my headphones. I don't think Preventable was aware that he'd been attacked. Yeah, they took a plaza. That was the right choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Like, with both coffers and villagers, they're very good, like, supplementarily. Like, with Baker, for example. Like, mass Bakers is rarely a good move, unless there's nothing better to do. But one Baker can often be fine, because, like, having just a few coffers can help you, like, if you hit one too much or one too little, you can modulate your money very well. Same thing with villagers. Like, having an Acting Troop can help if you happen to have one hand that's got a werewolf and no plaza in it, even if your main source of action is plaza, or even better, I think, here is Crown. Crown's a great village.
Yeah, crowning urchins seems pretty good, or minions.
I also really want to crown tragic heroes, because one problem you have is, like, let's say if every time you bought a tragic hero you popped it, which won't be true every time. Like, at the very least, the first tragic hero of your turn often will not pop. But like, if every time you played a tragic hero you popped it, you wouldn't actually be net getting plus buy from it, because you would buy the tragic hero, and then it would give you plus 1 buy, which you then have to use to buy back a new tragic hero because your first one died. But if you crown it, then you get plus 2 buys out of it, even if it trashes itself. And so crown on tragic hero can be a way to net increase your number of gains with tragic hero.
And you can get that sweet treasure twice.
Yeah, I would love to get a bunch of crowns, because tragic hero can gain crown. I don't know that I'm super inclined to get like a bajillion golds. Probably a few is fine, you can crown them. But the card I would love a ton of off of tragic hero is just as many crowns as I get my hands on.
Yeah, tragic hero and crown go together really nicely.
Now, 95% of why crown is a good card is just because throne room is a good card and crown is throne room. Crown is just like, it's got like a little backup effect of like, oh, if your throne room doesn't have an action card, you can crown a treasure too if you want. But the main reason it's good is just it's throne room, and throne room is really good.
Yep. And here, it's a throne room that tragic hero can gain you for free.
That's true. That in this particular kingdom is also a very good point. Is this one can be because it's a treasure and tragic hero gains it.
So Provincible's stuck in this awkward situation again, where they just don't have any villages.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see cdloomis is going for tact.
Interesting. They don't seem to have the deck to go for tactician.
Agreed. They have a bunch of treasure in their deck, and they do have some minions, but nowhere near enough to play a full sort of minions as a whole in the economy thing. You need a bunch of minions and a bunch of crowns to make that work.
Yeah. Now, there's two ways to think of tactician. So the one that's the natural way is Tactician looks like a card that like kills the turn that you've got it, in exchange for having a really good turn the following turn. Because you just discard your whole hand, your turn's over. But next turn you've got like double the cards, double the actions, double the buys. And so that's the trade-off you're making. And if you use Tactician for that, it's like an okay card. You don't use it that way particularly often. The other way, however, to use Tactician is the really strong one, which we were referencing a second ago, the double Tactician deck. And the way this works is you get 2 Tacticians, and then you play one of them each turn at the end of your action phase. So you do all of your stuff during the action phase, get your money, get your buys, etc. Then play a Tactician after all that's over, so that your following turn has 10 cards, 2 actions, 2 buys. And at the end of that turn, you play a new Tactician to set up for the following turn. You just always do that. The big constraint on that deck is because you're discarding your cards at the end of the action phase when you play your Tactician. Treasures just don't work, because you'll discard your treasures before you can play them. You can't play treasures in the action phase, only in the buy phase. So that deck only works with good virtual payload. Virtual payload being like money that you get from actions rather than treasures per se. So like you could play minions first, get 2 coins apiece, then play Tactician, discard your hand, you don't care, because like the Tactician didn't have any important cards you were discarding, and you still got the money from earlier in the turn, and you can still buy your province. And so like that's how you would use Tactician most of the time. And it doesn't look like they're trying to build that.
So this seems like a pretty clear mistake. They used Chapel to kill 2 cards rather than Mercenary.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why would you trash 2 cards for nothing when you could trash 2 cards for 2 coins and an attack and 2 draw?
Mm-hmm.
And as Cheddarteo points out, there's even more complicated stuff you can do with Tactician. Like you can play treasures in your buy or in your action phase using specific cards like Black Market or Storyteller, and there's wonky stuff. But as a rule of thumb, Tactician really likes non-treasure payload, and then you can build the double Tactician
virtual
thing.
Money. Not sure why they played the Chapel there. It seems like it just wasted an action.
Why does cdloomis still have 2 estates in the deck 18 turns into this game?
Yeah, that's a good
In a
question.
kingdom with Chapel and Mercenary, this should not be the case. These estates should have died by like turn 5. When did they get their first trasher? Let's find out.
So Provincible just picked up Province Duchy. I think it's even if you are going to start greening with Province, you don't want a Duchy this early. Duchies are really for later in the game when you're looking at a very small points margin and trying to keep an edge in the end game. You don't want to add a Duchy to your deck this early.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So with
that being said,
buy,
Provincible does seem to have a big lead.
Crown.
Yes, I think what it was is the first time cdloomis got any trasher at all was that turn 8 Chapel we were talking about. We were describing earlier how bad Chapel is if you buy it late. And I think this shows. They've still got those 2 estates hanging around way longer than they ought to. Province Plaza seems fine.
Yeah, you definitely need those plazas.
But yeah, just to reiterate, I think where this deck really ought to have gone, because neither of them I think is really going in the right direction. You want to get thin early. At the very least, Provincible got a Chapel early, which is the thing you should be doing. And you get thin, and then what you're eventually going to be having is like plazas, tragic heroes, crowns, werewolves. I think are the main cards. You could have like an acting troop just to have those villagers just in case. Mm-hmm. But you'll be popping your tragic heroes, maybe gain some golds and a bunch of crowns, and then keep rebuy tragic heroes. You'll get the treasure naturally off of those. Have the plus buys, and then you can build up to double or triple province. I think pretty easily doing that.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not sure if you actually want any minions. Maybe like 1 or 2.
No, I don't care about minions in the slightest.
No minions?
No. Like the 4-card attack, you'll get if you want that, you can add an urchin for cheap.
Yeah, I was more thinking that you're likely to get hand-sized attacked pretty often, and so it might be kind of nice to start off your turn by flipping back to a.
If there were a reliable way to top deck the minion, then I think that'd be worth considering. Like if you had scheme, then you could like scheme a minion each turn, and then use it as like a guide sort of to counter the mercenary attack. Actually, well, I do think there's one case you can get a minion, which we saw here. Which I think minion on 5/2 is quite reasonable. Like that's truly for you to want the other 5s. Like Tragic Hero and Werewolf aren't helping you that early. So I think minion on turn 1, as we saw Provincible do, is actually a totally fine case of minion. But I wouldn't be getting them from there. Like, Minion's not the main card of my deck. I'm just getting it in turn 1 because it happens to fit better than the other stuff early on. I don't want a second one. I don't want it to be the focus. Yeah, so, like, if you were playing the minion thing anyway, Plaza would be okay because you could, like, discard a treasure for coffers before minioning away your hand anyway. That being said, I think that the problem the minion deck suffers from is just lack of plus buy. You can't build a good minion stack with 1 plus buy per turn, and that deck doesn't handle Tragic Heroes all that well. And you can add Tactician, but double Tactician minion just sounds kind of slow to me.
Yeah, it's a fun deck, but I don't see it beating out a more traditional deck on this board.
Yeah.
So Provincible looking in good position to take this game.
Yeah.
Still not, still pretty over-terminaled, but hopefully it's not too much of a problem. I would love to see Provincible add an acting troop at some point. It's probably too late now, but
I mean, like, here would be a fine time to buy one. You don't really need a duchy, so you don't need to borrow or anything. Acting troop might be better than Plaza at this point.
Yeah, I think it would be, just because there's not that much game left. How many times are you going to see that Plaza?
Yeah. Yeah, like, if you buy Acting troop at this point, you're not even going to run out of villagers before the game ends.
Exactly.
Although, I mean, frankly, Provincible could pass this turn and I think still be handily in the lead.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one thing that's kind of relevant worth considering is, and like obviously I wasn't tracking the deck closely enough to know, but like Provincible did have exactly 4 cards left in deck. So like theoretically, if you're paying close attention to the game, you should know what those last 4 cards are. Like you would want to know what cards you've played already, what cards you haven't. And something worth considering is if your opponent has minions, if you borrow, minion won't hit you. Minion only hits 5-card hands.
Here you can get a crown. Take the crown. Don't get a silver.
Yes, crown is definitely better than silver here. But as I was saying, if you borrow and start with a 4-card hand as a result, the minion attack doesn't hit you. So if you know those 4 cards coming up are bad, you definitely don't want to borrow because you'd like to get minion attacked, and hopefully that like the pitching your hand and drawing you a new one can save you. But if you for some reason knew those 4 cards coming up were good cards, which you could because it was the last 4 cards in your deck, you should know what they are. You could borrow just to guarantee that you have those cards, and then even if you get minion attacked, it won't affect you, and then you won't have to discard those cards. This is not a bad
really
locusts. It's like this is both of these locusts have been friendly to locusts.
Yeah.
Like actively helpful for Provincible.
I don't know if Provincible is like tabbing out or something. It seems like they're not quite reacting to some of these hexes that are happening on the wrong turn.
Maybe they just don't realize what's happening, like that they're being attacked and they have to do something. They don't have the sound on. I don't know.
So here's another awkward spot for Provincible. You know, with some, you don't really need another duchy right there.
This is fine. A duchy and a werewolf attack. Like, I don't think you need to be playing super precisely here with Provincible. You've got a big enough lead that it will not.
Yeah, you're right. This game's pretty won. You can kind of do whatever at this point.
Just don't get that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Maybe they don't understand how Locust works. It's just an attack. Your opponent played an attack, and it trashes your card, and you have to gain a new card. But you get a choice, and so it's asking you to make a choice. Miserable Twice is not the thing that killed this game. not even like
4 VP.
Not even like top 10 on my list of things that influenced who won this game. Miserable's like a fine hex. It's mid-tier, maybe slightly higher.
So you probably want to discard the Plaza there, because I assume you're going to discard with Minion here.
I would think so, yeah. Yeah, they passed up on a free coffer there. If they discarded, they had to discard those treasures anyway. If you discarded with the Plaza effect, you get a coffer. If you discard them with Minion, you get nothing.
And cdloomis just got minions into quite an awful hand.
That's a fine hand.
Oh, they've attacked in play, though.
Oh, that changes. I was going to say, if they didn't have the tactician in play, they could just play this tactician, and yeah, that's fine. But, yeah, their tactician will save the hand anyway.
So they probably wanted to play Tragic Hero before Plaza.
That's a sad crown.
Yeah. Wow, that's a really sad crown. So with like Plaza and Tragic Hero, once you get some plus action, you want to play the Tragic Hero first so you have more treasure to discard to Plaza.
Yeah.
Just a small ordering thing.
Just play the crown anyway, for the sake of it.
Why not? Crown that province.
State. Yeah, sure, why not?
There's 2 provinces left. There's not much else to do.
Yeah, I think the state's fine there. I would not be buying copper if that's what they're thinking of. cdloomis with a 10-card hand is still not even hitting 8. What is in their deck? Their deck sure doesn't do it. What? Yeah, they're...
Neither of them built a particularly functioning deck this game.
Yeah, I don't think they did. I'm not really sure what the strategy here was. The tactician is not playing well with any of this other stuff that they've got. They didn't really get trashed early. And, yeah, I don't think, there's just like nothing to do here.
Yeah, I mean, even if they doubled here, they're still losing.
Yep. By a lot, too. They used to be 9 points behind with 2 provinces.
Yeah.
Like, from this position, I would definitely be resigning. I don't think that there's any...
Yeah, this is very resignable.
In Dominion, a points lead is not always a reliable indicator that you are in fact winning. In fact, I would say that probably the large majority of my games, versus lower-rated opponents, I am behind in points early on because they tend to score very early. Mm-hmm. So just the mere fact that you're behind in points is not particularly relevant. But in this case, they're both behind in points and have a worse deck. Usually what's the case is if you're behind in points, it's because you built longer and have a better deck, and so are likely to catch up and want to play one. But if you're behind in points and deck quality, and there's only 2 provinces left, that starts to look like the sort of perfect storm of resignability conditions.
Agreed.
You really haven't. You really have not.
Yeah, these hexes really have not hurt.
I don't think these hexes have anything to do with the result of this game.
Excuse me.
I mean, to be fair, they have been giving Provincial very friendly hexes. Those locusts are pretty helpful, but like that is that is not the main culprit here. It is their deck just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So another sort of ordering thing is when you crown a minion, you almost always want to have the first play discard.
Yes.
Because if you draw up a crappy hand, you're going to need to discard again. Mm-hmm. And whereas what we saw just happen was they took the first thing as +2 money, and then on the second play, they discarded and they drew into a dud. So just in general, you want to keep your options as open as possible.
Yeah, because like even if you think you're dead set on like I'm going to crown this minion, I'm going to use 1 for money and 1 for draw. If you use the first one for draw, you can always just use the second play minion for money anyway. So there's no harm in doing the opposite order. You still get the same effect. Just with the sort of backup case of like, just in case that next hand you draw is terrible, you could redraw a second time if you needed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, Sean.
Yeah, I feel like did we talk about this at some point yesterday?
We did.
Yeah, like if you've got a card that gives you info and a card that gives you choices, do the info thing first. In this case, Minion is both of those things. It will draw you new cards to then give you info about the choice of whether you want 2 coins or another draw.
Okay, looking like
Wow, that hand.
my pile of states.
This poor Crown.
Yeah, this Crown has not been living up to the hype.
Now, Crown is really not the problem here. Crown is a great card. I like Provincial might come away from this game thinking that the Crown is a bad card because it's not been working out here. But I think part of that is because like Crown's really good when your deck is full of actions, which it should be but isn't. Their deck is like, it's got some actions, it's got some treasures, and it's got a bunch of green cards. So this Crown's going to miss often in that deck. Crown is good, but it's good for a different deck than what they've built. If your deck had more plazas, more werewolves, more tragic heroes, you'd have a lot more plausible Crown targets. And plausible Crown targets. And then your Crown would be dudding a whole lot less often.
This is very resignable, as I think they essentially have half VP here.
Yeah, so like even if cdloomis gets both provinces and all the estates, they cannot win.
Yeah.
What if they give out all the curses by playing werewolf like 120 times?
Yeah, because of hexes, it's not quite half VP.
Yeah.
I mean, Lucas can hit a province when there's no duchies left. That can be a...
Yeah, so like if Provincial passed for like 100 turns straight, I think cdloomis could win by just buying the rest of the green cards and giving out all the hexes with werewolf. But short of that, I think this game is over.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Provincial has a point. You know, they would end it if they could. But there is a player here with the power to end this game right now. There is in fact a way that a player can end the game whenever they want to. It is the resign button, and it is highly effective at bringing the game to a close. Do the right thing, cdloomis. Fall on the sword.
Wow, I just realized we are on turn 28. This is a very strong...
This is not a 28-turn kingdom.
Wow. This is like, should end around turn 14 or 15, I think.
That's optimistic. This is like a 12-turn kingdom.
Okay.
Chapel, Crown, and Tragic Hero. Yeah, this is... This has gone on like 2.5 times as long as it should have almost.
Okay, Provincial just had it in hand and gave it up.
Why did they do that?
They must have missed borrow.
Oh, yeah. I could see overlooking that. Like, they haven't been using it that much this game. Let's see. They used it at all. They actually have not used borrow a single time. Neither players used borrow all game. So I guess, fair point. It's not on the radar.
I really don't understand why you're not resigning.
I think that some players, especially like newer players, think that maybe like resigning is bad form. Like it would be like rude to your opponent to resign. Like they're willing to end the game. They're not trying to win. They're trying to put themselves out of their misery. That's what that province, the losing province by the Victor Crumb play suggests. I think that they think that just like resigning is bad etiquette, and no, that's certainly not the case. It's like very chess-like in etiquette, where like if you're losing, you feel free to throw in the towel and go on to the next game.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about chess and Go, where resigning is very much encouraged. You know, you get into a position, you can't win, no one will be upset over resign. It's sort of considered the better thing to do.
Yeah. I'm recalling, I think it was Nigel Short, one of the more famous chess grandmasters. There's some tale, I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, where he's playing like a lower rated player, like an IM or something, who was in a resignable position and was refusing to resign. And GM Short gets like offended. And so when the player finally offers a resign, he declines it and makes him play out the rest of the game just to punish him for not resigning when he should have.
That's a bit cruel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe was it a draw? What am I recalling?
Yeah, they must have...
Are you sure? But I feel like I'm not wrong about these details. I could be mistaken.
Sean's right. You can't design a recline. Decline a resign.
Can you not? I will have to
No.
look that up. It is quite possible I'm misleading y'all. Or maybe I've gotten the details wrong.
But if you replace all the resigns in that game with draw, then it makes perfect sense. They were in a pretty drawn position. They offered a draw.
Yeah,
It
maybe it's
got
a draw?
rejected.
Yeah.
And then just to troll them, they would refuse any offers of draw, probably until they hit not enough material left that is a forced draw.
Yeah, I'd go digging for the story myself if I weren't preoccupied at the moment.
Anyway, let's look at this board. Blessed Village, good card. Not a huge fan of opening it. Likewise, I'm not sure you really want to get Sage open. It's a bit awkward on this board because it'll...
Yeah.
You just don't really have targets for it. Like, it's going to find Lucky Coin.
So the thing that
It's
sticks
okay.
out to me about this kingdom is there's no draw, so you can't build.
There's no draw.
You throw an even weak draw. Like, you throw a moat into this kingdom, and it plays very differently. Because you could build a draw engine with, like, moat and Blessed Village and Coin of the Realm, and that'd be worth doing. Because the trashing is good, the villages are good, the plus buy is fine. Everything else is good here, but there's just no good way to increase your hand size. I mean, just before someone in the chat is like, well, technically, you can technically increase your hand size. Because you can get either via Blessed Village or Fool, you can get Will-O-Wisp, which will draw you one card. So you could theoretically get a deck of like 12 Will-O-Wisps and draw stuff. Obviously, that's not realistic. So for all intents and purposes, you can't draw. So that, combined with the fact that Fool means you have Lucky Coin in the kingdom, will make money the right strategy here. You're not going to try to build a big deck. You're just going to do the thing that they're probably going to do anyway and just buy treasures and buy provinces.
Yep.
Now that makes Blessed Village, I think, especially questionable as an opening because you don't need a bunch of villages for a deck that's not building super big.
And even forgetting that, there aren't really a lot of terminals you want to play on this board.
Yeah.
I agree fully. I think Spice Merchant's the definitive 4 open. With 3, I could see Develop. I could see Fool.
Yeah, I agree with that. Spice Merchant Develop is where my mind is headed. I think Spice Merchant Fool would also be fine. Spice Merchant's a pretty good card. It trashes your coppers with no loss of tempo because you replace both the Spice Merchant and the copper that were in your hand with 2 new cards. So it's a nice, pain-free way to get rid of coppers. And then the Develop can take care of the estates and turn them into like silvers or something, which is a fine card in this kingdom. And then if your Spice Merchant or Develop ever run their course, you can just turtle them to get them out of the way. Something players might not know about Way of the Turtle is, so you let's say you've got the Spice Merchant in hand, you play it via Way of the Turtle to set it aside. Now, next turn rolls around, and you're prompted to play the Spice Merchant. You can play it as Way of the Turtle again to set it back aside. So you can actually take a card that you don't want anymore, an action card at least, and just set it aside indefinitely with Way of the Turtle. And just each time the prompt comes up at the beginning of the next turn, just re-turtle it again, and you never have to play it if you don't want to.
Turtle it forever. So that's really relevant with like Ruins, for instance, where your opponent junks you with Ruins. You can just turtle them and keep turtling them, and they never go back into your deck.
Yeah, or in this kingdom, a good example is like if you get Fool and your opponent does not, well, the Fool, you're going to have Lost in the Woods forever, so Fool is never going to be useful again after the first play. So you can just turtle it. And then if your opponent ever does get Fool and plays it, well then, bam, you can play the Fool immediately at the start of next turn to take Lost in the Woods right back.
Yeah, I actually think this is a pretty good kingdom for Fool because there's really not much else going on.
Whoa. So Folivora is saying Wisp is the only draw. That's not quite right. Edge cases abound. If you play Fool, you could get both Sea's Gift, which draws a card this turn, and River's Gift, which draws a card next turn, which would make that Fool net draw, which is even more questionable than the Wisp draw, but technically is draw and exists in this kingdom. Yeah, I think Fool is fine. In weak-ish money games where you're likely to have green cards in hand anyway, Fool is reasonable.
Yeah.
There's not too much to say about this. It's just going to be like, you want to play your Lucky Coin a bunch, get some silvers, and you buy provinces that way. You want to thin a bit. Like, Spice Merchant can get the coppers out of the way, and the Develop can get the estates into silvers. But, like, you're not ever going to have a real deck. Are you
Yeah, 5 is
good?
such an awkward price point here.
Are they good at the game? Or are they good at life? Are they morally good? That's some deep questions CD Loomis is asking in the chat there.
I am evil.
Preventable really needs to introspect and think about their life choices before they answer that.
So here you could trade Blessed Village, just flood your deck with silver. Silver's not a bad card on this board.
Yeah, that sounds totally fine to me. So thinking about the trade-off. So if your options are trash a copper with trader or trash a Blessed Village with trader, you could either have a... So if you trash the Blessed Village, you've got one less Blessed Village, one more copper, and 4 more silvers. And I think 4 silvers is worth having a no Blessed Village and having a copper.
Okay, we do finally see a Fool pickup. Feel late. Fool's generally a card you want to get pretty early, although there is something to be said about the late game Fool for some YOLO boons.
Yeah, Fool I think is just... It's not a card that I think is super impactful either way. Like sometimes you kind of get it and it kind of helps. Sometimes you kind of get it and it kind of hurts. And it's just like it's an okay mediocre-ish card. I think it's fine here, but like you could play without it and you'd still likely be fine.
Yeah, I feel like on most like Lucky Coin money boards, Fool is pretty marginal. I'll often play these kind of boards and I'll get Fool and my opponent won't. And the game will be very close regardless.
Yeah. I really dislike how many Blessed Villages they have. Why do they have that many? What are they for?
Yeah. I mean, they're not doing anything on this board.
Like, at the very least, I can understand why the person who has the Fool has Blessed Villages. Maybe they just really like boons. They're just like, I want as many boons as I can possibly get my hands on.
Gotta find those wisps.
Why would you... Who's the person who doesn't have the Fool? Let's see. Gains Fool. So, Preventable does not have a Fool, but is buying Blessed Villages nonetheless. If you want the boons that badly, why not just buy the card that gives 3 of them to you all at once and cost less instead of buying them one at a time?
Canal here? Yep. So Canal's a little tricky here. You're unlikely to ever be able to build to like 14 for a double province. Like I think you're mostly just singling here, but it will help your money deck be a bit more consistent because you just literally have to hit one less price point.
Yeah, Canal seems like a pretty reasonable card to buy here. It's like a treasurer, not a treasurer, a treasury. It's like +1 coin and top decks itself. Canal's like that because it's like functionally +1 coin if you're only buying one thing per turn, and you see it every single turn.
Probably Canal.
Was there a gold buy? Honestly, like gold is not the worst buy that they've made by a long shot. Mostly these Blessed Villages. This is a weak kingdom. Buying gold is not the worst thing here. Even I will not complain. Now there was a gold buy in the last game that I did not sufficiently complain about. I think I whined a little bit, but like yeah, the last kingdom the gold buy was unacceptable. This kingdom, yeah, sure, gold, whatever. The kingdom's weak.
Ooh, we got a wisp.
Okay, we can technically have a 6-card hand now.
So Spice Merchant's a great card. Like we were saying, I think it's the correct open. It's a good card to have in your deck. I don't think on this board you want 2 of them. I
think there is a scenario who justify 2 of them, which is if you had Develop. Because I think 2 Spice Merchants is often fine to me if there's a good trash for benefit source. Even Trader, maybe, you could justify having 2 Spice Merchants. With the idea if you get thin faster, get rid of all 7 of your coppers, and then you can trader those Spice Merchants into 4 silvers each, or develop them into like a silver and a duchy or something. And then you're fine. But they're not, either of them really doing that. And certainly that's only 2 Spice Merchants. And so for this deck, I think 2 Spice Merchants is not good. This is something I recall from yesterday. Preventable responds to all of CD Loomis' messages, but there's always like a long delay. Like CD Loomis will say something and like 5 minutes later Preventable will be like, now's the time to respond.
Yeah, they pontificate an interesting amount in chat.
Yeah. I really thought through one of those words.
Very interesting to see the comments between lower level players.
I think they're chattier.
Yeah, they're definitely chattier. It's a bit less serious and hyper focused.
Oh yeah.
So gold here seems okay. We're doing Messenger.
Messenger's kind of a...
Thing is, I don't particularly want any of the cards. Messenger for copper.
I think
Okay.
that makes sense. They have 2 Spice Merchants. Their opponent has 1. The copper is probably less bad for their deck. I don't have any problem with the copper. They've also got the Will-O-Wisp.
Yeah. I just don't think I've ever seen that before.
I've said this before, but like, I think that a fair portion of the time, a good play for Messenger is just to hand out a bad card. Like for me, it's often a Messenger and Curse, but Messenger and Copper is very similar, where you're trying to decide like what card helps me most relative to my opponent, which is not necessarily a good card, right? Like a good card might help both of you in equal measure, in which case it's not really good to give it out to both of you. It's kind of neutral. And often one thing that you can easily point to as being like better for one side or the other is like which deck can handle junk better. And so you look at that, and oftentimes the clear answer is like, I'm thinner, I can deal with the curse better than they can, I'll give us both a curse, that sort of thing. In this case, copper.
I'm not sure why we really need these coins.
They really like villages.
We both don't have a lot of terminals, and we have a ton of villages.
Yeah. DZ was saying earlier. This is very much a case of the village idiot scenario. Village idiot, I think, is classic Dominion terminology for people who just like buy lots and lots of villages with no clear reason. And we're seeing that here. The blessed villages are next to useless. The coin of the realms are entirely useless. They're worse than useless. It's just a copy. You're buying extra copies for your deck.
Oh no, they didn't discard Fool.
Yeah, like villages in Dominion in the abstract are very strong cards. Often very important cards because most of the time, why are they
holding on to Fool?
Most of the time, the ideal strategy is going to be to play a lot of action cards, which require a lot of villages. But if you're just buying the villages portion of that and not the terminal action cards that require villages to play them, you're just wasting your buys.
Agreed. So this turn, when it started off, they had Lost in the Woods. So when you have Lost in the Woods, discard your Fool because it can't do anything this turn. It's just a dead card.
Yeah, that is true.
And then after that, they got Wind's Gift, and they still held on to Fool.
Actually, that's not quite true. You could hold on to Fool with the idea of turtling it, which they also didn't do, but would have been a reasonable reason to keep it. So like they made the wrong play at the stage where they played the Fool instead of turtling it. Playing this way, the turtle would have been totally fine.
Yeah.
I am speedy. Chatateo is just sort of demonstrating the turtle point by typing very slowly.
The new version of Way of the Turtle, you have to take 3 minutes per move.
Preventable was playing Way of the Turtle a lot every time cdloomis Werewolf attacked him. I think sometimes you just get players who are like, I don't understand this thing, it's weird, I'm not going to use it. And I could see Ways being one of those things. Like, I don't really get what this turtle thingy is, doesn't make sense to me, I'm not going to bother with it. Yeah, we were talking about a Grave Robber match the other day where I was like, clearly Grave Robber, and Shanahan was just like, Grave Robber, that's not a card that's in my vernacular.
Grave Robber is a very tricky card, but it is pretty crazy in being essentially an expand when you play it on action cards. I mean, for a 5-cost card, getting to trash something to worth 3 more is like very significant compared to most remodels that only let you go 2 more.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem with Grave Robber is it requires a lot of support to make it work because it's terminal, you need actions to feed to it, and it doesn't draw on anything. And so oftentimes the kingdom is just not strong enough to support Grave Robber as a payload. But if you have an otherwise strong kingdom, Grave Robber then becomes really strong because you can just do a lot really fast. You can trash a card to get a new Grave Robber, grab the other card back, then it sort of snowballs really quickly. So like with like Livery, I think is an ideal case. We got the answer. Wait, what are they responding to? I always forget because they answer cdloomis's comments so late.
Yeah.
They turtled that comment for like 3 turns and then just decided to play it.
Okay, so this should be a duchy.
Yeah, I would think so. So it looks like Provincial is going to win this one as well. They've got a province in hand. I don't see cdloomis double provincing. not with this hand. Or with any hand, really, in this kingdom.
Yeah, and okay, they do find a copper, because Sage is not going to be able to find a copper. And yeah, Sage can be really good early on. It's great cycling, it skips jump cards, but then once you have expensive green cards in your deck, it often will just find those.
Yeah. Yeah, Transmute, I think, was very appropriately skipped here. As Chatateo points out, it is very hard to use effectively. It is, in fact, a terrible, terrible card. One of the worst cards in the game. Certainly bottom 5. I think, just used it effectively in some game yesterday, but those cases are rare. It is certainly not anything worth thinking about much of the time. You'd more or less play Transmute effectively if you just never bought it. The cases where it's good, it's like barely good.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played a good Transmute game. Not that I didn't roll a board where it probably is good and I just didn't see it, but personally I don't think I've ever played anything that used Transmute in a serious fashion.
Is Brent Spiner a Star Trek Next Generation character? I've never watched this show.
I haven't watched DNG, but I assume so. Probably an actor.
All right, so it's 2 for Provincial. I think they've tied it up now because it was 2 for
should be 2-2
yesterday. Yeah. As cdloomis points out in the chat. But I do believe cdloomis gets to go first for both of these last 2 because Provincial went first for the first 3.
Yep.
The standard tends to be to alternate, like each person goes first once and then once and then once and then once. But there's no real reason you have to do it that way. What's important is just that you each play 3 games of the match going first to account for a first player advantage. Not really when you play them. So this order is as fine as any.
Wow, this is a powerful board.
This is a really good kingdom. There's so much going on here. Wowza. Yeah, so you've got Trashing with Butcher or Replace. I think Butcher's probably the better of those 2. You've got Groom, which is great at gaining you stuff. You've got Draw with Barge, Villages with Hostelry and Farming Village. And Horn of Plenty, which is a phenomenal payload. You can do a whole lot here. I think Scepter is potentially even very interesting here. And a nifty little trick you can do here is like use Horn of Plenty to gain Horn of Plenty, then Scepter during the buy phase to draw with Barge to draw the Horn of Plenties you just gained and then gain more stuff with the Horn of Plenty. Like this could easily be like over in 10 turns. This is really, really fast. But yeah, the long and short of it is the end goal of this kingdom should be to play a bunch of Horns of Plenty. I'm not sure every new player knows like the strength of Horn of Plenty, but it's a really good card. It's a great payload card. If Horn of Plenty is around and there's any possibility of playing a bunch of them in one turn, that's usually the thing to do. It's usually pretty trivial to get 8 cards in play or 8 differently named cards in play. And so your goal is just to like play 8 some number of cards and play some Horn of Plenties and just gain all the provinces in one turn. And that's it's really strong.
Yeah, you can think of it like analogous to Bridge and Bridge Troll, where it's the kind of card where it lets you have these giant mega turns where you can be behind the whole game and then you can just storm the green.
Yeah.
Provincial picked up a farming village. Don't really like that.
Hate it. Absolutely hate it.
I really want to groom for them.
Yeah.
With groom, you can groom for barge once it's ferried. You can also summon barges.
I think that the plausible things you could do here in the opening, it's kind of interesting. I think my goal would be groom and then ferry a 5 cost. Could be barge, could be butcher. But like groom and ferry, and then your groom can start gaining the barges and butchers if you want to, which is really nice. Or you could butcher your estates into more of those cards, like butcher an estate into a butcher, or a barge, whichever one you ferried to lower the cost of. Alternatively, you could just open one with that right. You could like ferry butcher turn 1, buy it turn 2. Those are the options. Don't like the silver buy, don't like the ferry. No, I do like the ferry. Ferry is fine, but ferry is weird with silver. And then I don't like the farming village. I hate the farming. Farming village is useless. Why would you buy that? Also, what are they doing? Okay, yeah, we just talked about this last game a bit, but like Provincial is none of these plays are making any sense. Turn 2, they bought a farming village. Turn 3, they bought a hostelry, which is worse than a farming village.
Now we're buying gold.
Oh, good. I don't have time to deal with the previous errors before the next one crops up.
Well, here's a second. Take your time.
Yeah, okay.
Preventable BRB. Let's go into this.
Let's work through these one at a time. So the villages. There's no reason to buy a village turn 1 or turn 2. There's just not. Villages are good cards because when you've got too many terminal action cards in your deck, villages let you play more of them on the same turn. So that if you draw them together, you can still play them all. You cannot possibly have too many terminal action cards on turn 2 in this kingdom because you've only had 2 turns, one of which you spent buying a village. So you're just adding a card to your deck that is doing absolutely nothing for you. It's like passing the turn, basically. Like, this is not meaningfully different from just passing turn 2 entirely. Turn 3, they did the same thing. They've passed 2 turns. cdloomis passes the turn 4. It's functionally what I would read this as. Is they've passed 3 turns in 4 turns total. This is not a thing you should ever do. There's wasting turns, throwing them away. The silvers are also not particularly good. Silver is frequently a good opening if you need to get to 5. Like, there are power cards here for 5. Barge, Replace, Butcher, etc. If you removed Fairy, buying a silver early could be pretty reasonable to get you to hit those $5 numbers and get the cards you really want. But there's just a much easier, simpler way to hit those 5-cost cards here, which is to Fairy it. Reduce the cost. You don't need to hit 5 money to buy it. You can buy that cost for 3. And so the silvers, I think, are also ineffective by virtue of Fairy. But at least more reasonable. Certainly infinitely more reasonable than the Farming Village or the Hostelry Buy. Next, the Hostelry Buy certainly makes no sense. Because just like, compare Hostelry to Farming Village. Hostelry, if you buy it for 4 coins, which they did, is literally just Village. Like, no difference here. It's +1 card, +2 actions. The thing that makes it good is this on-gain effect. This effect is often actually very powerful. Like, in the abstract, Hostelry is a much stronger card than Farming Village because of this nice on-gain effect where you can gain horses. This is often very strong. That being said, they didn't do that. They bought it for 4 and didn't use this at all. So once it's in your deck, it's just a village. Farming Village is like a village that at the very least skips over your estates all the time. So it's just strictly better. Like, if you just add one of these cards to your deck, Farming Village is just better. It skips your estates, the other one doesn't. I don't know why you'd ever buy the Hostelry for 3. And then lastly, we had that gold buy. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here, but gold is terrible. Please don't buy it. Never buy it. Never ever buy it. Not in any kingdom where you have any hope of doing anything else. Last kingdom, you get a pass because that kingdom was really weak. You can buy gold that kingdom. This kingdom is not really weak. This kingdom is phenomenally strong. There's no excuse to ever buy gold in this kingdom. Buy real cards.
Yeah, so grooms are still a 10. So far, we haven't seen any summon. Summon Barge is incredibly powerful.
Yes. The way I would think about summon is, let's say you're going to buy a card for 4 coins anyway, like Groom. You're paying 1 extra coin to get this summon effect. What you're doing is, you're playing that Groom at the start of your next turn, and it doesn't cost an action, and you don't have to draw the Groom. So, this summon is equivalent to buying 1 play of a Lost City for 1 coin. Lost City is the card that gives +2 cards, +2 actions. Right? That card functionally increases your cards, your draw by 1 and your actions by 1. If you got to play a card for free, you both got a free action there because you didn't spend an action playing it. You got a free draw because you didn't have to draw it in your hand before playing it. So summoning a card is like getting that card plus a free Lost City effect. Or not free, it's a 1 coin Lost City effect. So that's really, really a nice bargain. Yeah, like summoning grooms, summoning barges, summoning lots of things is really good here.
Yeah, so again, the general strategy on this kind of board is you want to kill off some of your bad cards with Replace or Butcher, turn them into better cards. But mostly you want to be using Groom and Fairy to add a lot of good cards into your deck. You want to start off by adding a ton of draw and some villages. And then from there, you can add some Horn of Plenties for payload. Summon also works really well with Fairy, as we talked about, as well as with Groom.
Yeah. So chat's talking about Horn of Plenty Megaturn. Yes, undoubtedly. Nothing else comes close. Horn of Plenty is far and away the best strategy here. So as far as trashing goes, I think important cards to trash here will be the estates. You could butcher or replace them into nice cards very simply, so you get a benefit out of trashing them. The coppers I'm actually less worried about trashing quickly, because here's a good use of hostelry. Let's say you've still got a bunch of coppers around, but you've got a bunch of draw. Like you're drawing your deck through with barge. You could play the groom at the end of each turn, gain a hostelry, and discard all 7 of those coppers and gain 7 horses. And then a horse is like a 1-time +1 card, right? And a copper in your deck is like -1 card. So if at the end of each turn you discard your 7 coppers and add 7 horses, those horses sort of neutralize the bad part of having coppers, right? You had 7 stop cards in your deck, the coppers, but you added 7 horses, which will draw those 7 stop cards. And so if you just discard the coppers and gain horses at the end of each turn, you're kind of functionally playing with no coppers in your deck. You're not getting to play the coppers for money, but they're also not hurting your deck's draw ability because you're giving you horses to cover their cost. And so that's how I sort of de facto get rid of the coppers in this kingdom, is just groom for hostelry every turn and discard them all for horses.
Yeah, and Horn of Plenties can gain hostelries as well, which lets you potentially get a lot of horses without having to spend 4.
Yeah, I'd either be gaining it. I was thinking groom, but Horn of Plenty serves the function certainly equally well. You get Horn of Plenty to gain a hostelry as well. Now, DZ is pointing out what I think is a pretty clear misplay of Butcher by Provincible here. So people might not realize this is Butcher because it's clearly like a remodel variant, like Replace is or Remodel itself is. But unlike the other ones, like Replace and Remodel, you don't actually have to trash with Butcher. You can just play it for +2 coppers, and then the trashing part is optional. And so, like, let's say you've got a copper. Like, you don't really want to turn a copper into an estate. An estate is a worse card for your deck than copper is. So just play it for the 2 coffers, and then you'd rather have the copper than the estate in the short term. And let's say your plan was going to be, like, I'll turn it into the estate first, and then I'll turn the estate into something good the next time around. You can still do that. If you play it for just doing nothing, you don't trash anything, you still get the 2 coffers from it. And so you bank those up.
Coffers are huge because they mean that the next time you play Butcher, you have way more possible targets.
Yeah, so like if you bank those coffers up and don't use them the first time, you can still trash the copper next turn and then remodel it straight into a farming village or a hostelry or whatever other card you wanted. Shadowtail is pointing out another mistake, which is, so cdloomis has Fairy on Barge, which means Barge costs less than 5 now. On cdloomis' turns, Barge costs 3. For Summon, which costs 5, you could gain that Barge and also play it for free, which gives you a free card in an action. They had 7 coins and bought Barge. What is strictly better than that is summoning the Barge, which gets you the same Barge with just a free +1 card +1 action that they passed up on for no reason.
I don't think you want to draw there.
Yeah, that was definitely a bad play. Barge is great because if you draw in hand like that, where you've got like, oh, I've got a bad hand, you don't need to draw into the nether regions of your deck and flip over your Butcher and your farming village. Just set it aside for next turn, and then you have no risk of drawing things dead. You can have a big turn next turn and not ruin your deck by drawing through your good cards. I don't even worry, to respond to Shanahan's question, about like the number of uniques. Like sometimes in like very marginal weak Horn of Plenty kingdoms where like the engine's not very strong, you have to like seriously consider like, can I get 8 unique cards in play? And occasionally that's a bit of a struggle. In any decent engine, just like the uniques come naturally. I think it's kind of trivial to get 8 in play here. Could be like farming village, groom, hostelry, barge, Butcher, horn, scepter, right there, or like a single silver if you had one of those. I don't know.
Any decently strong board, you should easily be able to get to 8 uniques. And the other thing is, if you get to the point where you can draw your deck and you can play a bunch of horns, even if you're not at 8, you can use the horns to gain you the uniques you're missing.
Yeah.
The other thing is, in a Horn of Plenty mirror, you might actually not need to get to 8 because piles might be low enough from both players building their engines that you can just use the Horn of Plenties to empty out piles and then maybe grab like a duchy to win or something.
Mm-hmm. I don't like the Horde. Horde is a card that's like fine for big money strategies. Like if you're just like, this kingdom is weak, I don't have anything better to do than buy green cards. Then you can add a Horde early and then buy duchies to get golds and then later provinces and golds, and that's fine. It's good if nothing else is good. Here, lots of things are very good. Basically every card in this kingdom except for Bard is really good. And so Horde would not even be, I think, worth thinking about here.
Yeah, I mean, Horde's a money card. It lets you add some golds to your deck, which is not something we really want here, in exchange for taking on green cards, which again is not something we really want here. Horde of Plenty lets you do all your greening at once.
Yep.
And we don't want the golds. We're not struggling to hit price points here.
Yeah. I do not want a gold in my deck, not a single one. I do not want to prominence on my deck until the final turn. But now, let's say, supposing you didn't see the engine, like you didn't notice those cards. I think a reasonable thing, like you could do if like half of these cards didn't exist, would be like replace in Horde. You like buy some green cards early, you get some golds in your deck. You can replace those golds into provinces, and then you can replace provinces into provinces to lower the pile fast. And like that would probably be like a money strategy here. It'd be like just like 1 or 2 replaces, 1 or 2 hordes, and then province quickly. They're kind of sort of like half and halving it, where they're building a little bit, but also adding like money-ish things like Horde. And they're not really trashing very much, and so it's not leading to it's kind of the worst of both worlds. Like they've got enough stuff that they're not getting quickly, so they're not getting the benefit of the big money deck, but they're also not really putting together the engine in a way that it actually is like drawing its deck consistently.
Yeah, and I'm very confused why almost all the duchies have been taken.
I'm even more confused why 5 estates are missing.
That too.
Why are they getting estates? When did this happen?
Provincial bought an estate. Estates.
No,
bought an estate.
If you were replacing coppers into estates, you'd be expecting a lot more curses to be missing.
That's true.
Provincial just bought an estate outright on turn 16 with like 6 provinces left.
Yes, this is a very confusing game to me.
The Horde explains like 1 or 2 of them. Some of them are also provincial butchering coppers into estates, which we talked about as, I think, them just misunderstanding how butcher works.
Duchy to gold. Okay.
I don't understand.
I'm so confused.
I'm not sure what the game plan is here.
I think it's to play like butcher Horde money.
Like I don't know if this is true or not, but it kind of feels like there's like kind of clicking on like individual cards that look good, but without like an overarching strategy.
Why are we turning coppers into estates?
I'm like, if they made the mistake one time, then I think they just are never going to recognize this game that like butcher doesn't require you to trash, and so they're going to make that mistake consistently. But like you definitely want to have a game plan. Like from before turn 1, you want to decide like, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to build a big engine? Am I just trying to play money? And like you kind of got to stick to that, because if you do like a little of one, little of other, you often end up in a pretty bad middle ground, which is what we're seeing here. And so if you want to play the money thing, you stick to it. Don't waste your time on villages. Money deck doesn't need villages. Just like buy a replace or 2, buy a horde, and then start greening and get it done quickly. Now that's not a good strategy here, but like it's consistent and will beat what they're doing. The ideal strategy here is to build the big Horn of Plenty deck, but that also requires sort of consistent focus throughout the game. You got to realize that deck does not want gold, so it doesn't want horde. It doesn't need any of this stuff. It just wants to get thin. It wants to get lots of draw. I want to be clicking on barge a lot. I want to be summoning things a lot, and I want some villages and Horns of Plenty and butchers.
Why?
Oh, yeah, that was a good deck. There was even Chapel in that kingdom, and DZ just like skipped Chapel entirely and just played Trader Seer, and that was a nice combo. I think we talked yesterday about Seer and Silver, a nice natural combo with one another. I remember that game too.
Yeah, I remember you posted that one. That was pretty cool.
Oh, I very much had a plan. My plan was to play 10 Necromancers every turn. Yeah, it was very, very generous of you to allow me to. I don't know, DZ. I saw an engine. I saw a Chapel. I wanted to go for it. I don't remember what engine I was building. I just remember what DZ did. In any case, who's winning here? Provincial has the points lead, but it's only 1 province up, and there's 4 left. So
they both have very junky decks right now.
Yeah, it's hard to say, I think. I would assume by default Preventible's in the lead, again, because like they have the points lead, and it's not clear that that's being offset by like a big difference in deck quality here. I think I would just next turn this Barge twice. Play it for next turn now, and then Scepter it, and then you have an 11-card hand next turn. You're pretty much guaranteed to Province, likely double Province. Nope, they draw one. They did hit Province, though, so I guess it paid off. That was someone in chat wanted to play out this kingdom after this match. Sure, after the match is over. I think they have one more game, but I'd be happy to play one additional game where we play this kingdom if you want. Oh, nope, Truffles beat me to it. Y'all can do so. So what are we turning this duchy into? Just a gold? Why?
That feels particularly wrong when you're this behind and there's this little game left.
Yeah.
Now you need literally both the provinces in order to win.
Like, there's a very high chance you are never going to see that gold again before this game ends. So all you're really doing there is just, like, taking 3 points away for no obvious reason. Like, I think much better would just be to, like, play the Butcher and, like, trash nothing, for example, and just keep 2 coffers. Because the coffers are definitely going to be in your hand, sort of functionally speaking, next turn. If you're unlikely to get back to that gold. And then you still have a duchy round.
Keldar, J-Nails guessed 12 turns, I think, for this kingdom. So that seems pretty accurate.
I think this kingdom could end in 10 turns. If we're asking most likely, I would say, I'm going to say 12. I think. I think Hostelries will run fast. I think Bards will run fast. And then Horn of Plenties. So maybe it's 11. I'm torn. I don't think it's going to be long, though. I think 10 to 12 is the range we're talking about. And I think we'll likely end on, like, Barge, Horn, Hostelry type stuff, where either those piles empty or they force you to green very early.
Okay, so cdloomis might sneak out this win right here.
Okay, let's see if I can do it. I just need to draw 2 coins. I don't know what the next card is, but if it's a green card, the farming village will skip it.
Hey, they got it.
They pulled it out in the end.
26 turns. Wow.
That is a lot.
All right, so we're going into the last game.
Up 3-2 for cdloomis, and cdloomis gets to go first. I mean, y'all both got buried in VP at the end. There should not have been that many green cards in either deck. This is interesting.
We got goons, but no village.
Yeah, so you can't build the big goons deck because you only play 1 goons per turn. So with no plus action, which is the big limitation here, you got to think about, like, what's the one terminal action card I want to play per turn? Because that's all you're playing. I think Goons is the strongest here. You got the discard attack, you got the plus buy, you got some coins, and you got victory points. So, like, for playing a single plus action per turn, 1 Goon is pretty good. The other options would be, like, Camel Train, which is Poorhouse, which is terrible, and Kiln, which would be good, except you can't get any action cards in this kingdom, because if you don't have any plus actions, Kiln is necessarily the last action you play of the turn, so it can't duplicate an action card for you. So I think the goal is just to, like, have 1 Goons and play it kind of consistently. I think you want Research to thin the estates and coppers out, and you want Hunting Party for draw. Hunting Party is just like a laboratory, but even better.
Hunting Party seems like the most important card on this board.
Yeah, I'd love to have a bunch of Hunting Parties. And then you'll play with a few treasures. Honestly, you could even get a gold or 2 here, because Hunting Party kind of likes variety. Like, rather than having a bajillion silvers, just having, like, a silver and a gold, the Hunting Party will find each of those. Whereas if it has a bunch of silvers, it'll find the first one and then skip over the rest of the silvers. So something like a bunch of hunting parties, like a silver and a gold or two, and then you're I don't even think you're ever building up to double province even. I think like 13 money or so is a nice amount to like do like single province plus a hunting party. And maybe you build it about that big and then start greening.
Yeah, double province seems like a bit of a stretch here. Maybe you hit it once, but I think mostly you're single provincing and threatening that you're able to like prov duchy.
Yeah. So I think opening wise, options could be like silver research or camel train research. I kind of like the idea of using the camel train to try to win the hunting party split, and then you pick them up back off the exile mat at a later date.
Oh no, we exiled a gold. I definitely want to be exiling hunting party.
Yeah, I mean, like, a gold or two is fine. I certainly don't care about gold nearly enough to be exiling one that early. I think I dislike cdloomis's choice of exile even more, because whatever you exile, you are necessarily getting multiple copies of. To get that card back off the exile mat, you have to buy a goons. And there's no reason to have two goons in this deck, right? You can only play one of them. And so, rather than having multiple goons, have one of them and then have a lot of draw, so you find that goons every turn.
Yeah, hunting party does not really reward having duplicates of cards.
Yes.
And here, because there's no village, you can't really do anything with the second goons.
Yep. Yeah, like hunting party is basically like laboratory, but it skips over cards that you already have in your hand and finds you cards you don't already have. So it's nice if you have like a nice assortment of cards, like a gold, a silver, a goons, and it'll find all of this for you. And it'll skip over the rest of them.
Yeah, so hunting party decks, assuming you have enough hunting parties, are like very resilient to green. Because let's say, you have 4 provinces in your deck. Once you've drawn one of them, the hunting parties will skip over the rest of them. And as long as you have a bunch of differently named cards that together give you enough payload, it's pretty good at getting all those into your hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you want as many hunting parties as you can get. You probably want like 2 or 3 researches because it's the only thinning and it's not the fastest. You could get rats, trying to hand suggesting rats. Like picking up rats and turning the carpets into rats will make your researches draw better. That's something worth considering.
Yeah, the chat really likes the idea of research rats on this board.
I'm not sure if it's good, not sure if it's bad. It definitely is something you could do if you want to.
I feel like you need a slightly better trasher than research to make rats work, just because they're going to breed so fast.
The thing that worries me about rats is if you set aside your goons for the turn, you're pretty unhappy.
You mean research?
If you trash the rats with the research, you'll set aside 4 cards,
okay.
and I don't want my goons to get stuck out of play on the rats, or on the what do you call that? Wherever the cards from research go.
They go under research.
Okay, there you go. That's the location. And I don't want my goons to get stuck underneath the research. I mean, they go on top of research. They go face down on top of research. I don't want my goons to get stuck on top of research. That was even a rules clarification, and DZ is in the chat. I was expecting a more timely correction.
Yeah, having never played with research in real life, I have no idea if the cards go under, above, whatever. Luckily, we have the client, which just handles all of that for us.
All right, we got a hunting party buy from cdloomis. I like that. DZ is definitely the rules expert. I feel like 95% of all rules clarifications across all game chats, Discord discussions, etc., probably in real life too, are resolved by DZ. Like I assume if just like 2 people are playing in like some random board game store and they're like, "What does this rule do?" DZ just shows up and clarifies it for them.
So we're loading up on Goons. Goons is definitely a very good card, but like we were talking about, you don't really need more than one of them. You want 1 Goons and a ton of hunting parties so that you can find that Goons every turn.
Yeah. Now, there are kingdoms where you want a ton of Goons, namely like every kingdom with a village.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is not in the category of every kingdom with a village because there are no villages here. But if there were a village, playing lots of goons at once and getting like 6 goons in play and buying 7 things and getting like 42 points would be wonderful. Obviously, you can't do that here, so there's no point in getting more than one.
Yes, this looks like it's set to turn into a very sloggy game.
I like the choice to pick up guides. Guide is a very good counter to goons because if you discard down to 3, you can just use your guide to get a new 5-card hand. So having at least 2 guides in the game will counter the goons effectively. You need 2 because if you played 1 the last turn, you call it this turn, you won't be able to get it back and play this turn to protect next turn. So you need to have them like alternating.
Okay, let's see some hunting parties.
Yeah, definitely hunting party here. Like basically, once you've got your goons, you're just clicking hunting party every time you hit 5 or more for a very, very long time.
No, I don't want 2 harbingers.
I don't want any harbingers.
I don't want 1 harbinger. Yeah, if you don't want to buy a hunting party there, guides seem a lot better than harbingers.
Yeah.
So there you probably wanted to play, although it worked out fine, the harbinger before the guide.
Top deck a silver here. Why are they top decking another harbinger? This is just increasing the number of clicks they have to go through for no benefit.
That was the long way to do it.
I don't know. There was a game a few days ago. I forget what game it was, where Jonathan and I were deeply divided on whether Haven was a good card, and I think that has been a common point of reference ever since. John seems to think Haven is not a good card, and I quite like Haven. Why? What are these doing for you?
At least buy guides. They do something.
I don't get the harbingers. I don't know what the point of harbinger is. Harbinger is just like a nothing card. It doesn't do anything.
It's a fantastically bad card.
Now, to harbinger's credit, it is basically never worse than nothing. It is just a nothing card. And there are a lot of Dominion cards that in a lot of kingdoms are worse than nothing. Like Poorhouse here is much worse than nothing. So Harbinger will very rarely be the worst card in the kingdom. But it's just sort of like passing. It's just like you've added a card that neither improves nor hurts your deck. Yeah, so I think the problems here, to sum up, are they're not prioritizing the draw. The hunting party is such a good draw card, and they're instead putting lots of goons in their deck. What is much more efficient is just to have the single goons and lots of hunting parties, which achieves the same result of guaranteeing you play goons every turn. And we're seeing, I think, very misplaced priorities in the 6 goons being gone and only 4 hunting parties. It should be like 2 goons are gone, 1 for each of them, and then like all the hunting parties are missing. Yeah. Research is a good card here.
I think I want to open probably Research Camel Train. I want to get a goons. I want to get literally every hunting party, and then once hunting parties are out, I think it's time to start greening.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I do like that Preventable has researches. Obviously, trashing cards is good and achieves a very similar effect as having hunting parties, which is if you have fewer cards in your deck, you have less to draw in the first place. And cdloomis seems to not care about trashing cards at all, which is not good. Isn't this the last game of the match?
I believe this is game 6.
I mean, this does have to be your last game tonight, just by virtue of there are no more games to play, so you're in luck.
And yeah, scheduling it in J-League seems like a nightmare. Your opponents just leave halfway through your sets.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're determined to score with goons, which isn't how we're going to score in this kingdom. It's kind of funny because in some of the other kingdoms, we saw them just rushing to buy provinces and just playing very province heavy when that wasn't the thing to do. But here, provinces are definitely the thing to do. But
now, to be fair, I would not touch province until hunting party is empty. So it's still not green time yet.
Agreed, but they're not buying hunting parties, so
yeah.
And with Mountain Pass, goons. You probably do want to buy the first province if you can.
To Goons' credit, it does cost 6. So if you research Goons, that is a lot of draw. So maybe that's their plan?
No, don't toss hunting party and Goons.
Well, you see, you can't research golds if they're exiled. You can only research cards that are in your hand. It's a rules issue that I expected DZ to have a better grasp of.
Preventable got hit by Goons and discarded a hunting party and a Goons, and kept a Harbinger and a Copper. Very confusing to me.
Wait, let me find this. Wow, yeah, what? But they have a guide down. That's why. That makes sense. They're just gonna call guide, so it doesn't make any difference.
Right. Yeah, if there's a guide down, you. All right, that makes more sense. So yeah, let's see what they bet here. The sort of canonical bet is 13 or 14.
16 seems a little bit high. Not unreasonable. The downside here is if that stops you from buying cards for 2 turns, you're passing up on 4 points. So I think I'd bet on the low end. Like 12 is not a bad number. Even if you're buying like kind of nothing cards like Harbinger or Haven or whatever, it's still better than not buying them with Goons around because you'll be getting 2 points off of that. And so if Mountain Pass gives you 8 points but causes you to miss out on 4 Goons points, it's kind of only net 4 points. And 16 dead is a lot for 4 points.
Oh, we're buying Desperation Coppers.
I think it's also too early for that. I think a thing a lot of new players do is they're like, I've got Goons in play, I should use every possible one of my buys, and I'll buy lots and lots of Coppers and get lots of points. And then what happens is your deck just kind of turns to shit, and then it scores much fewer points in the long run.
Yeah, you don't generally want to add Coppers to your Goons buy until you're pretty sure it's the last shuffle, and you're not going to see those Coppers again. Yeah. To be fair, Mountain Pass is a bit confusing. When I first played with it, I thought there was like an interactive bidding where we went back and forth.
Yeah, I've definitely had players bid like 1 to me, and I have to be like, are you sure about that? I don't think you understand this card, and then they ask for an undo and whatnot. The text does say each player bids once. So like if you read it closely, you'll figure it out. But I can understand why someone might just see like, oh, it's a bidding thing. I'll start the bid low or whatever.
Yep. And there's nothing else in the game that involves bidding. So. Yeah.
But yeah, as a rule of thumb for Mountain Pass, I think that the baseline, like I think you said a second ago, is like 13 or 14-ish is usually a reasonable amount of money to pay. And then it goes down if debt hurts a particular amount, or if victory points aren't all that valuable to you, and it goes up if debt hurts very little. Like I've had games where I just bid 40 because I know that I don't need to buy any more cards for the rest of the game, and I'll just like gain them, e.g. via Grave Robber or something. No, that's not super common.
Yeah, I've definitely had boards where like you're building a bridge megaturn, they grab a province to try to screw you up a little bit, and you have to bid really low because you still need to add a couple extra cards and the points aren't going to matter. And you're not building a lot of real money.
And then one other thing that I think people often don't realize is because Mountain Pass, the bidding technically takes place after the turn has ended. If you buy a province in the last turn, there actually is just no Mountain Pass bidding. So if the first province bought is like the turn you're in the game, like you empty 3 piles and buy a province to end the game, the bidding doesn't take place because the game ends prior to the after that turn phase. The game would end at the end of
Makes
the turn.
sense. Similarly, you can't use donate in between turns on your last turn.
Right.
As I think many of us have unfortunately found out when we were like, I'll buy a province and donate to kill all my curses and then I win.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think it's actually a pretty good thing because otherwise, if you just bought the last province at the end of the game, your opponent would just bid 40 immediately because the player who didn't buy the province goes first. And so they basically just get to shotgun the victory points by bidding 40 debt, which won't matter because the game's over. And then you're not allowed to bid more than 40, so they just automatically get 83 points from you buying province. And that would be rather unsatisfying.
There's the poorhouse someone asked about earlier. Will we see a poorhouse bought for goon points? Yes, we will.
Why buy the poorhouse? Poorhouse is worse than copper for you.
Yep.
Like, you can't play poorhouse and also play goons. So who's in the lead here? I'm not sure. Like, so the points lead goes to cdloomis. The Provincial did have 2 researches this whole game, though, which I think should make a difference. I'm not sure maybe if there are some like micromanagement issues elsewhere that'll give cdloomis the long-term lead. But if not, like, I'd expect the deck that plays 2 researches consistently and gets thin to do better than the deck that is full of junk. To be fair, Provincial's deck I think is still also kind of full of junk, but should be less so than cdloomis's.
Malo, that makes me really sad.
Sean has a good point. How are there only 5 cards in the trash? Weren't these researches acquired like very early? Or am I mistaken about that? Yeah, research turn 2. Don't know when they got the second one. Turn 10. Yeah, 5 feels like a very small number of cards for that research to have trashed. I think an important related aspect to trashing your cards is adding draw cards is a good way to get trashed faster. Like, if you have a few trashing cards, but you also have a deck that draws, reasonably reliably, you'll trash quicker than if you have the same number of trashing cards and like lots of money and goons and stuff. Because, like, for example, if you had hunting parties, you would draw around to those researches most turns and be playing them almost every turn. And so, drawing is sort of like, not only does it go hand in hand with trashing, because trashing more cards means you need to draw less cards, but also the reverse is true, that drawing more cards helps you trash more effectively. Mm-hmm. And so I think the lack of draw might also explain why they're trashing so slowly here. Now we are, I think, getting to the point in the game where I'm not particularly concerned anymore about like getting all my coppers thin. Like, you should have done that already, but like now that you haven't, it's kind of too late to start now. Trashing coppers now isn't going to have time to pay off very much. So now I think the main benefit of those researches should be more so like, I'm going to trash the highest value cards I can justify to get really big amounts of draw really fast. And then basically every turn where you research like a gold or a goons or something, you're pretty much guaranteed to at least province the next turn. And that'll be how you bring the game to a close. Like, I really think the person who has 2 researches here should be winning, but they are not. I'm not totally sure why.
cdloomis is adding a lot of copper to their deck for goons points, which in theory will choke them, but might not actually matter here.
It's funny because like cdloomis has done like 2 things that are individually quite bad, but like come together to make each of themselves less bad, which is their deck is flooded with coppers, but they've got all these harbingers, which are normally junk cards, but if you're drowned in a sea of coppers, all of a sudden the harbingers are like halfway decent because they help you find the good cards in the sea of bad. Certainly not that I would recommend this Harbinger copper thing, but there's a little bit of a synergy there.
Yeah.
I do like that they have more hunting parties. That is a good point. Hunting party is a very good card. The
The
best card in
hunting
this
party
game.
being at 6 and Harbinger being at 0 is incredibly strange.
Yeah, that should not be the case.
Yeah,
That
that'd
would
be
be
really
interesting.
interesting. I'd also love to see new players' reactions when they watch our commentary. Are they learning stuff from it? Is it like, wow, I didn't realize that was bad? Or,
Like, I very much remember some of the mistakes that I made as a new player, like not figuring out why in the world you'd want to trash cards. I remember thinking I was so daring in like one of my first games for trashing like a single estate. Like, I'm gonna trash one of my victory cards, and it's gonna give me like a remodel or something. Um, I imagine that part of it is like there's a level at which the thing that they're doing here will win a lot of games. You know, if you're not good at building a strong deck, then the player who just like clicks goons a bunch and consistently clicks copper and scores like a few points per turn will win if neither deck ever comes together and does a whole lot. And so I think you get a lot of these false positives where stuff like buying lots of golds or buying copper every time you get to goons, it looks good for a while because it does well at a level where your opponent can't really punish it. And so then you sort of get locked into strategies that in fact are pretty weak in the get-go. They just do well because they're simple to execute. Whereas the optimal strategies are hard to execute and then therefore often fail early on.
yep. I don't know if I really agree with um, you here, Sean, just because here there's no combination that you need to learn. It's just a pretty basic. You should prioritize draw, and there's only one draw card, so you want a lot of that. And uh, Goons is a good card, but it's terminal and there's no village, so you don't want a bunch of them. And none of these are specific to the cards. It's just general concepts in Dominion. Like, do you want multiple terminals with no village support? How much draw should you add? The answer is all of it.
Yeah, the one thing I guess I would describe as combo-esque in nature is I could easily see someone not realizing the guides versus goon interaction. You don't normally think of guide as like this counters discard attacks thing. You think of it as like I just want to mulligan my hand thing, and maybe you don't realize that it does work that way. But yeah, beyond that, I kind of agree that this is more of a simple principles kingdom. It's like, what do you do in the absence of villages? You add one terminal and a lot of draw and try to get thin. And I don't think there's something super specific here that you need to really be accounting for. This also, again, I think goes back to something I was saying in the last game, which is I think you really want to come into the kingdom with a strategy. Like, you want to have some sense of where your deck is going. It doesn't need to be perfectly lined out. Oftentimes, you make some decisions on the fly, but you want to think about what are the important principles of this game long term. And if you just look at this kingdom for a second, I think the long term strategy that really suggests itself is I want to play lots of hunting parties. It's the only draw card. It's non-terminal. There's not other cards that are worth getting because most of the other stuff that is terminal you can't play without a village. And so I think from the get-go you could identify main long-term goals have lots of hunting parties. And I think that should suggest a lot of different things about what you're doing early on. Like we were talking about camel train openings for the purposes of setting hunting parties aside to win that split. Because I think if you recognize the long-term strategy, you would realize that that pile is the key pile I want a lot of.
I'm guessing we're gonna pile here on duchies and havens.
Duchies and havens. That seems possible.
Goons probably first. I mean, no one really wants more goons, but
cdloomis has a strong incentive, I think, to lower the goons pile because they have a pretty big points lead. Goons copper, I think, would be a pretty reasonable buy here. Duchy's also fine. And Preventible's in a bit of a tough spot there because, like, on the one hand, lowering deputies does seem super risky. You're behind a lot in points, and that's one of the lowest piles. On the other hand, like, you do also kind of have to score.
Yep.
So that still might have been the best set of buys there anyway. I think this is looking to be CD Loomis's game.
Making a comeback on this board looks very difficult.
Yeah, there's not a kingdom that's strong enough for you to build a big comeback. Now, like, that previous kingdom, I would not concern myself in the slightest with points until, like, the last turn. If my opponent started greening early like they did and had, like a 30-0 lead, I don't think it would even be, like, of the slightest concern. Because, like, the Horn of Plenty thing will score, like, as many points as you want and then the last turn.
Yeah, on that previous kingdom, I feel like I could have passed 5 turns or something and still had been fine with my engine.
I think you could have passed, 14 turns? Because they took 26 turns.
Right, it was like 28 turns.
Kingdom. So, yeah, I think like passing 14 turns is probably not unreasonable. That's quite the compliment to get. Liking Hunting Party is a good thing. Hunting Party is just like Lab but better, and Lab is already pretty darn good.
Yeah, Hunting Party is one of the best non-terminal draw cards in the game. It's just a phenomenal card.
Yeah, I mean, that's a weird thing to get. I don't think X is a very good letter to like. Like, in terms of, like, if I had to rank the letters of the alphabet, it's maybe dead last, if not close. Like, it doesn't function to fulfill any unique role. You could replace it with, like, CKS and be fine. It's really unnecessary, I think. I think CD Loomis is getting kind of peeved that Preventable takes, like, 10 minutes to resolve every single Goon's discard. I think they're really checking out on CD Loomis's turns instead of paying attention.
Yeah, it's not the politest thing to do.
Yeah, like, I mean, this person also bailed in their first game. Like, I think you want to at the very least give your opponent the respect of, like, paying your full attention for the course of the match. And you want to schedule the match for a time where you can afford to do that and not leave early or not pay attention during their turns.
Yep.
That Goon's buy from
just wants out.
I mean, you can press the resign button, you know. You don't have to end the game by emptying piles. If you just don't want to play, you can press resign. Clearly, buying Goons there doesn't make any sense strategically speaking. That's Preventable being like, I want to lower the last pile and try to end the game. But if you wanted to do that, you could just press resign. They have not resigned any games. But I think it was CD Loomis in the previous one was doing the same thing, where like they were clearly too far behind to win, but instead of resigning, they just like played on until they could themselves buy the last province and cause themselves to lose. I guess the one thing I will say is, like, I'd always type GG before resigning, just to show it's not like a spiteful thing, like, I'm done, quit. Just type GG and then click resign, then I think it shows that it's just like a respectful, like, I know I can't win, have the win. And then people will not get angry. And if someone gets angry at you resigning, then just, I don't know, blacklist them. That's silly.
Yeah, no serious player is going to get upset with a resign.
Yeah.
Okay, if they find a treasure here, it's game.
Hey.
Wait,
they didn't need treasure. Didn't they have a camel train in hand, or am I mistaken?
Oh, yeah, they did. I didn't even think about that.
They could just exile the Last Haven.
And this is just unnecessary. Just click Goons, wait 5 minutes, and then...
Yeah, maybe they're trying to draw on so they don't have to click Goons, because they know their opponent is going to take an extra 10 minutes to figure out which cards to discard. Why are they top-decking Harbingers? Do they think
a copper here.
Do they think that something happens if you just play 10 Harbingers in a row instead of just top-decking directly? I don't understand.
It's a cheat code.
I would not go to the subreddit for useful advice. Now, why did you play this, Goons? No, this one is cdloomis' fault. Preventable is going to be preventable and just take 10 minutes to decide what to discard. But like cdloomis did not have to play this Goons to win. They had 3 money in hand. They could have just played the silver and bought the Haven. If I could win without attacking my opponent and making them do something unnecessary, I think you probably should do that. That is on cdloomis for making their opponent click unnecessarily here. Just play the silver and take your win. The Goons is not needed. There's no like points bonus. It's not like they break ties by looking like, oh, you scored 69 points this game. It's just a win and a loss, and that's all that matters.
Okay, you don't have to think about this. Just click the card, and then you win.
So are Shanahan and Truffle still going to play out that previous kingdom from Game 5 at the end of this?
Sean's in.
Because I'll keep this recording going until the end of that, if you all want to do that. I don't think Truffles is around anymore. Maybe she wasn't even responding in the first place. She said sure, but then has since left. If she's not around, I'll do it. Shanahan, you want to set up the table? I also think general etiquette is for the person who won to report, and then on 3-3, I don't know, just someone does it.
Yeah. I feel like most tournaments have winner reports.
Yeah.
Just because it stops, it stops cheating for one thing, but also it just is a nice, simple like convention.
Yeah. All right, Shanahan's got a table up.
Okay, let's check it out.
Just be sure to reference in detail the specific cards and plays Shanahan should make, like with like particular like lists of cards in his hand, just for the viewer's sake, not for any self-interest reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going for Fairy Barge. That's Shanahan.
I like Fairy Barge and DeGroom.
Is Shanahan still listening? Should I not be saying super important things like, "Oh, I was the worst player ever. He definitely should have done this other thing."
Sean is listening.
Okay.
Sean, if you want to
no, it's fine. This is unrated anyway. I'm kidding around.
Sean, if you want to unmute yourself, we could talk through the board and stuff while we play it.
Yeah, you can join us.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the king. I think this is like informative when we're talking about these complicated strategies. Actually, saying what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And this is a king that, like as we said, a really explosive and interesting kingdom where if you Fairy Butcher, I wouldn't be surprised, and it might be better.
Yeah, so things I'm thinking about are, I mean, you could just do like Fairy Butcher and Buy Butcher, and then you'll get rid of the estates a little bit earlier. I do really like the Groom plus Fairy something. The thing I'm thinking about is whether I want the Barge super early. Like, Barge is obviously a really good card here. A thing I think I want to be doing often is, like, if I have a Groom in hand and any reasonably large number of coppers, I'd really like to just play the Groom, gain a Hostelry, and then just convert all those coppers into horses a lot. And then maybe what card goes best with that kind of strategy. That might be Barge. I don't know. I think Fairy seems pretty clear. I'm definitely clicking Fairy here on 3. But some combination of like Fairy and Groom, Fairy and then buy the card I Fairy, and whether that card is Barge and Butcher, I think are all a little bit unclear to me.
You can also re-Fairy at some point.
Yes. I think I'm going to start with the Butcher. I think I value trashing those estates, but it is not at all clear to me that Barge is like worse or anything.
It does make more sense to move Fairy from Butcher to Barge because you probably want more Barges than Butchers.
Yeah, and I think my goal here. Oh, this is a nice hand for me. I think, unless I hit like 2 next hand, which is actually reasonably likely.
Well.
I was really wanting to like do the Groom Hostelry thing one turn and then buy the Butcher the next turn. But I'm really running the risk of hitting 2 here, which will make me very sad. Oh no, I hit 3. I'm fine.
Well, I'm very sad.
So you got 4. What happened for you? You went Fairy, Barge, and then Groom, and then turn 3 you bought the Barge. Oh, you're Groom bottom decked. It's the one card on the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. 1 in 11 chance of that. So what are you buying here? I have a thought.
I'm buying
Sorry, what'd you say?
a village, as I have multiple terminals now.
Yeah, I was thinking farming village. Obviously, if you're just buying it at full price, farming village is just better than
All right.
the other thing.
Okay, I think the game has lost its educational value now.
Is your hand that
Barge Groom, 2 coppers estate.
Let's play it out. I think it'll still be helpful to see the final result of this deck. I think if these players didn't know where the deck's supposed to look like.
I don't know if that's right, or if I should next turn the barge there. It's not super clear to me.
I'm not sure which one of those is better. So I did not find my groom, but I did find a lot of coppers. So I'm thinking of just taking like 6 more horses here. Would not be unreasonable. If I have to kill this estate anyway. Kind of like that. It's either that, or I could like take another butcher or something and then summon a hostelry, or take another hostelry and then summon a butcher. What do I have down there? Those next 4 cards are a copper, a groom, and do I have more horses? I played 3 horses. I think it's 2 more horses. I could just summon a butcher and then kill a horse. Do you have strong thoughts here? For context, my hand is 6 coppers and an estate.
I don't really know. I mean, if you have an estate down there as well that you can butcher, right?
I don't, because I've trashed 2 estates and the last one's in my hand.
So chat requests that you guys turn spec chat back on so they can participate.
Sure, there you go. Yeah. So the things I'm in between are just like gain a hostelry, gain 6 horses is nice for accelerating my deck, and the alternative would be like gain maybe like a hostelry and 1 horse, and then like summon butcher and butcher a horse and get another 5. I think I just like the hostelry thing. I just want to keep this deck running smoothly. And something I was discussing during the game is like gaining horses with those coppers is basically just sort of like neutralizing the coppers. Like I'm not getting the money from them, I'm not getting to play them for money, but I'm adding a draw card to my deck for every copper I have. So for every like space that copper would have taken up in my deck, I've now got sort of a horse to compensate it. Like 1 horse plus 1 copper sort of neutralize each other and equal each other out. And so the basic idea of getting these hostelries is mostly just like it gets my deck running quickly by getting the coppers out of the way. And then I might just do this yet again. Like I just really like drawing lots of cards. And then pretty soon I'll be looking to move my fairy token over to barge, so I can start grooming for barges and summoning barges.
Second groom even here?
It is not unreasonable. Yeah, I don't think I value a second butcher that highly. Like I said, I'm not super worried about getting rid of my coppers very quickly. I kind of like the groom idea. If I take a silver, no, I wanted to afford fairy, but I can't do that this turn anyway. I'll just take the groom.
Okay, so I can groom now for a bunch of horses. I was also thinking about next turning my or summoning. Well, if I summon though, I don't get any. I think I like summoning anyways. Here.
Now, I thought that when chat requested that spec chat be on, that meant they actually had plans to mention things, but apparently it was just for the aesthetic value. I see how it is.
So
help me please, I'm new. What do I do? Okay, so I have overdraw here. This is important. If I gain a card now, because I have surplus draw, I can then play it the same turn. And so the thing that's going through my mind right now is like, what cards do I most want to get in play and play this turn? And the things that are sticking out to me are Horn of Plenty is great because I could draw it, play it, and get another card. Or I could like get a barge in play and then like set that down to draw for next turn is also an idea.
How do you gain and play a barge?
I could butcher a horse into a barge and then
Oh,
draw.
okay, butcher. Right.
Yep. Now I think again my main goal I think is I really really want to get that fairy token on the barge. I'd love for my grooms to be able to gain barges. So I'll probably end up like groom, hostelry, discard 4 of these 7 coppers eventually as my last play of the turn. I don't want to do that now because it'll go into my discard pile and I want to do the overdraw thing first.
And the horn would be the 5th unique.
Yeah, so I could I don't think I need a second butcher all that badly, but let's see how that works out. So if I butchered a state into butcher, then I played the horse, and like I couldn't get a Horn of Plenty off of that. I couldn't get and play a Horn of Plenty. Like if I did butcher a state into butcher, draw with 1 horse, butcher the second horse, I don't have any draw left. I wouldn't want to like groom for an estate just to draw the Horn of Plenty. I could just... I have 4 actions, only 3 cards. So I could groom for another groom. Seems kind of trivial. There's no harm in doing this. And now I have butcher, 2 grooms. I think horn sounds pretty good to me right now. Wait, that wrong card. I have to kill the horse for the horn. Horn of Plenty. Draw that. Now groom for hostelry. Discard 4. And I'll take a farming village, I guess. And I want a barge. And I want to... Actually, do I want a barge? I don't think I want a barge. I can get the barges in the middle of next turn with the grooms, so I'm not sure if I want the barge now. I may probably still do. Barge is a good card. No, fairy barge. I was considering getting Scepter to Scepter the barge, which in the abstract is better, but I was really worried about like maybe I don't get through this whole deck and don't get to the end, in which case I'd rather have the barge now.
All right, I've got 2 barges, groom, 6 coppers, so my last 2 cards are copper estate. I can also do a gain and play here, but only with groom, so not as exciting.
Well, you could gain a barge in the next turn, right?
Yes. Yeah. Guess that makes the most sense then. Unless I bottom deck it. It's probably better to give up a horse. So now I feel like I have plenty of draw. And now I'm going to switch over to butchers.
Alrighty. It's a shame you didn't have 1 more coin, because like buying butcher and then summoning butcher would have been kind of nice. Or
I thought about
fearing
for silver.
butcher and summoning butcher. I said that wrong.
I thought about grooming for silver for about 1/10 of a second. And then...
Oh, so I'm not quite drawing this turn, which is a little bit sad. Even despite taking the safer route and trying to get a barge. But no biggie. So I want 1 set of hostelries, or 1 hostelry instead of horses. And I think I should leave a copper so that I can get a card costing 5 instead of 4 off this horn. And then I'll take some barges. And I will take a scepter, I guess. Maybe a second horn. I'll take the scepter, I think. Scepter is nice for 2 reasons. First is it's functionally a non-terminal barge. If I like next turn a barge, then I can play the scepter to play that barge and then get the same effect as playing another barge without costing an action, because scepter doesn't cost an action to play. So it's like a barge but better as long as I have another barge around. And then secondly, there'll be nice gain and play things to do where you play Horn of Plenty, gain treasures, more Horn of Plenties, then scepter a barge for this turn and draw the Horn of Plenties and play them on the same turn. Unfortunately, none of that's going to happen soon because I've got a terrible hand here.
So I've got Barge, Groom, Butcher, 7 coppers. And so I can butcher something into something. I can gain another hostelry, probably is what I want to do. I will not have enough actions to both butcher into a... I can play the 3 terminals I have in my hand. If I want to play a 4th, I have to gain and draw a hostelry.
Yeah, so...
Which doesn't seem great right now, but...
You have estates in your hand?
I have 3 estates.
Yeah. So I assume you're butchering the estates into something, and then groom for some horses, then get a Horn of Plenty. Does that work? I'm not sure. It's honestly a little bit harder for me without being able to visualize it.
Yeah. I'm going to grab the second butcher, and next turn that, and then buy the Horn of Plenty. I've got 1 barge coming in and a couple of horses.
Yeah, my turn's a little bit sad. But I think from this turn onwards, I think I should be having a pretty good deck.
Okay, I'll play that horse. I'm not going to do the math here, although I could work out the odds based on how many coppers I discard here, if I'll be able to draw those back. Okay.
Yeah, so now the risk here, I think, is, Barge and Hostelry are already pretty low, and Horn of Plenty can be lowered very, very fast, because the Butcher could gain a horn mid-turn, then you could play that horn to gain a horn, and then you could play Separate to draw Barge to play that horn, and then get another horn, and that snowballs really fast. And so I think, with optimal draws, I do still think that this game could easily have ended turn 10. As you saw, I just had a bit of a dud turn last turn, and then you had a bit of a unfortunate starting hand. And so I don't think turn 10 is on the cards for this game, but it does seem pretty reasonable to me that if Barge's at 2, Hostelry's at 2, Horn's only 8 right now, that in a kingdom with really good draws, that turn 10 is probably the low end of when this game is likely to end.
Yeah, I and my turn 5, I collided my 2 total terminals as well. So it was
yeah, exactly.
The worst possible first 3 to 5 turns I could have, I think, with my open. But I'm not confident that you're not just going to win on this turn.
I don't think I can quite do 6 horns and the rest of it, but we'll find out. I think more likely my goal this turn will be to set up to win on the following turn. And so we'll see if I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about this. What did you get? So you've got... you have 3 Horns of Plenty, which is a bit of an issue for me. Because I do need to take Horn of Plenty. I can't let you just have, the lion's share of them, or when it comes to provincing, you'll eventually outscore me. But if I do take Horn of Plenty, then the Horn, Hostelry, Barge pile, and so on and forth are all really low. I guess I'll briefly consider, can I win this turn? I think the answer is no. I could butcher a horse into Horn of Plenty. I could groom for Hostelry and Barge. Then there's 5 horns left in a barge. Then I can play 2 horns for 2 more horns, which leaves 3 horns left. Then I scepter the barge to draw those horns, in which case I play those 2, and then there's 2 horns left, and there's 1 horn left. And then, maybe, can I win? Can I maybe win actually here? I think, maybe I'm one coin short, because empty horn and barge, I would need 8 coins. Let me double check this. I think what I counted out was I needed to buy a horn and a barge. So the idea would be I butcher a horse into a horn, and I draw that. Now I've got 2 horns, and there's 5 horns left. Then I groom for a hostelry and a barge. Now there's 5 horns and a barge left. Then I draw that with the rest of the horses. And then I play my 2 horns. Now there's 3 horns left. I play the scepter to play the barge again to draw those 2 horns. Then I play those 2 horns and gain 2 more horns. And now there's 1 horn left. And then I have to gain 1 horn and 1 barge. And that costs 8, but I think I only have 7. I don't know what that last card is, but I don't think it's not money. I only have 7 coppers. I don't have any silvers or golds or anything. If I could butcher something...
One estate?
I have an estate in my hand, and I can't kill that, obviously, because I need the 1 point to win. If I butchered a groom into it, then I would have the coffer needed, but I wouldn't have the money. This is really close. It seems to me that I am a single coin away from winning here, which ironically, despite the poor draws, would be turn 10. So turn 10, definitely not an unreasonable estimate if with these draws we're still one turn away, or 1 coin away, I mean. Butcher estate to groom and pile estates. I don't think I can pile estates, can I? I don't have that many gains. Like, the horns are nice because they regain themselves, and so that's very easy to empty. But 8 gains of estate seems really hard.
You've got 4 grooms, right?
So no, Moyo is pointing out a groom pile. I should consider that. Do I have enough actions for that? So what if I...
Enough actions, that was what I was counting, but it's possible.
Yes, if I groom for a groom and play the groom, and groom for a groom and play the groom and so forth, that maybe could work. Let's see.
You also gain 1 hostelry in there.
What?
So you can gain a hostelry in there to give you another action.
Well, that would be self-defeating, right? Because if I... Oh, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you're right about that.
You have to gain anyways.
So I play 2 grooms, and there's 3 grooms left. I draw those 2. I groom for a hostelry and a groom, and there's 2 grooms left. I draw those. I think that might work. I'm going to try it. I'm not going to bother counting it, and if it doesn't work, oh well. We'll see if this works out. Don't need to discard for anything because I'm going for the win here. Yeah, what Willow Helmayan is saying is correct. Is like discarding a copper to gain a horse is like converting the copper that's in your current hand into draw for next hand. So you're like losing 1 draw now by discarding the copper and gaining 1 draw for the future by getting a horse. And so it all works out pretty neutrally. Okay. So now I groom for a groom.
Yeah, you just need 6 coins. If you have 2 more.
So I'm pretty skeptical of this working. I don't think this is actually going to work. I think I'm low on actions. So if I now butcher, what's that?
Oh, can't you just groom, buy 2 barges?
Oh, you're right. I was still thinking the horn pile. That is much easier, isn't it? I was thinking about emptying 6 horns, which is a little bit harder to do. Yeah, that's a win. Very simple one. I'll butcher groom and groom.
And then you can scepter, groom, gain barge, or butcher or something. You can do all sorts of stuff.
What is not productive to do?
Discarding groom, gaining a hostelry, and discarding coppers in the current turn.
Oh yeah. Mid-turn, like sending 7 coppers to your discard of 7 horses is just totally neutral because the horses will just redraw the coppers, unless you've got like throne rooms or something and wanted to like throne the horses or something.
Yeah. In practice, the coppers will all be on top, and you'll just
So let's scepter, groom.
So this actually wasn't close. You had it by quite a big margin here.
Yeah. The groom pile
was
the key. I can even buy a province.
Credit to Moyo.
Or I could move my fairy token 3 times.
Just to rub it in.
So it ends on Bard, the key card of this kingdom, clearly. Yeah, so there we go.
Easy wants to know if we can do it in 9 turns.
Yeah, so 10 turns. Now, an important thing here that we didn't really see is this game ended fast, so it didn't show how this game would end if, like, one of us did that strategy and the other one did not. So, like, let's say, like, one player played the style of strategy that we saw them play, and then one player played this strategy. Well, the piles wouldn't be an issue, right? Like, we saw here, you left, 8 cards across 3 piles. There were no piles empty, and one with 5, one with 1, and one with 2. And that alone wasn't even enough, right? I was able to pile 8. That wouldn't be a threat if you were the only one playing that deck, right? If I was playing big money and you left 8 piles, the type of deck that cdloomis and Preventable were playing can't threaten to gain 8 cards in one turn or anything like that, or gain and regain. And so you could sort of more cavalierly lower piles and build your deck really big and not worry about those early endings. And so what would have ended up happening would be the player who builds this deck ends up getting like 6 or 7 Horn of Plenties and then emptying 8 provinces all at once, or however many provinces are left, and they would win that way. And what happens is, a lot of times if you both build an engine, what you'll see is the engine's never fully mature, because if you both do it, the key piles lower very fast, and then it becomes sort of like this mad dash to end the game on 3 piles early. And so it might look like the engine's weak, because like I scored 1 point, you scored 0 points. But like if one of us had not done that and had sort of erred from the optimal path, you would get punished for that really badly, because you can't threaten to 3 pile them, and then the engine does get really big and beats you in the long run.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say about this kingdom. You have anything else to add?
No, just this is a fun kingdom. Like, obviously, I had a dud on my first shuffle, so I was a little bit behind. But even then, I felt like I had a pretty good chance. If you didn't find a pile out there, I had a chance to get my own then the next turn.
Yeah,
so,
the fact that you were ahead on horns was going to be a really, really conspicuous problem for me if I couldn't win there, because if I can't win that kingdom with just 1 Horn of Plenty, that's not enough. And if I start to take horns, then you have a very real threat of doing the same thing on your turn.
But also, yeah, we didn't emphasize grooms initially, and the groom ended up being quite powerful there. We emphasized the 1 groom. We didn't emphasize how you could get more grooms and do more stuff, and it turned out that a bunch of grooms here is useful because you can gain your ferried card and villages, and you're just exploding your engine really quickly.
Yeah, a very important thing for like fully eking out all the value of a good engine is the ability to gain cards mid-turn and then play them on the same turn. So you want to not just have enough draw to draw your deck, but you also want to have enough draw to draw more than your deck. So that, like you saw here, you can gain a horn, then draw back to that horn and play at the same turn. And then that horn can gain a thing, and you draw the next thing, and so forth. Like, for example, you could groom for a groom, then draw that groom, then groom for another groom, and draw that groom, and like a chain effect, like compound interest of sorts. Or the Horn of Plenty. You can Horn of Plenty to gain a Horn of Plenty, play Scepter to play Barge to draw that Horn of Plenty, get another Horn of Plenty, and it snowballs. And so Groom has that benefit of being a mid-turn gainer, which allows you to sort of quickly snowball piles, which ramps up the engine much faster than just buying things at the end of the turn. I like the Fairy Butcher opening. I wasn't totally sure at the start, but the way this played out, I think, convinced me that Fairy Butcher was a little bit better. Trashing those estates early felt really good, because the coppers are very manageable with the hostelries around. I'm not totally sure, though. Like, Barge is not a bad card. So I'm leaning a bit more to Butcher now, but I still don't think it's totally decided.
Yeah, and you move through shuffles so fast because of the hostelry stuff that you're able to play the Butcher reliably every turn on an estate.
Yeah.
So it seems, and especially because you probably only want 2 Butchers, and then you can move to Barges. As we see, you had 6 Barges at the end of the game.
I did the 1 Butcher even, and that worked fine for me.
Oh, you're right. You did only get 1 Butcher, so you managed to do everything you needed with the 1 Butcher and then switch to Barges. Yeah, you're right. You only trashed 1 estate because the game ended so quickly.
Or 2, but yeah.
That's fun. Hopefully this is informative to the people watching it who weren't quite sure how to build an engine here.
Yep. All right, I will end it here. Thanks for participating, and thanks to kHz for co-commentating.